is always, I was born in a little log cabin on Hollywood Boulevard, but
You were.
I grew up in LA. And as a matter of fact, I was going to talk to you about that because as a teen, I grew up with you guys on KPFK and KMET
Oh,
and going to parties and all that stuff. I live in Washington State in a very rural area now because
that's nice.
we left, we went up the coast, we went to Monterey, Big Sur, and then now we're in Washington State, me and my wife. But I remember with you guys, which is one of the things that blew my mind when your agent guy,
Oh, you mean Jeff,
yeah,
our promo guy?
yeah, your promo guy, Jeff.
Yeah.
Like, would you be interested? I said, interested. I've always been interested in these guys. I've been going to parties, getting stoned with these guys forever. And I mean, I'm in Washington. It's legal, so it's not a problem.
Well, it's legal almost everywhere now.
Yeah, well, even if it is illegal, it's still legal unless you're like Mississippi or Texas or something.
Fantastic cigarettes, long in the leaf, short in the can.
Yeah, but you cats, I mean, when I was like 15, okay, I was listening to cats on KMET, KPFK. I'd go to parties. We'd all get high and have fun with you guys. But you guys were always so just irreverently on it. And I think that's what's so cool. Irreverently on it, whatever it is. You know?
Yeah.
And I'm going to see what I got here. All right. So I'm talking about the early LA, KPFK, KMET, going to parties and all that kind of stuff. And you guys really kind of changed a consciousness, which is what rather than talk about your history, I'm into your consciousness, because the consciousness precedes history, because if you're not conscious to do that, it can't happen. And let me see what we got here. I know you got a new album out, and I know it's dope humor of the 70s and all that stuff. How in the heck did you finally come up with all these things to do the new album?
Well, you know, what's interesting, David, what you're really saying is that you heard the original live performances that we did on local radio.
Yes.
That is the reason for this release. After 35 years of no vinyl recordings, we got the vinyl solution. We are releasing a double vinyl edition of Dope Humor of the 70s, which has on its cover, which I can't hold up because it's not out yet, a picture of the group in a small studio. Which one it was, David will know. KPPCK, FUCK. I don't remember it anymore.
FUCK, that was a good radio station.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was a liberal arts radio station.
Yeah. But that was an amazing time in LA, and to have the audio outlet of those stations being so progressive to play your stuff, that was amazing.
It was amazing. I mean, it's a listener supported station, and we were a listener supported group because we were making phonograph records. Okay. Now, when you made a phonograph record back in the 60s, you, especially a comedy record, you wouldn't get a lot of radio play, especially a long form comedy record, which we pioneered, you know, a 20-minute cut on one side and the same on the other side. So we did not expect airplay, and we didn't expect people to excerpt us. We basically made the records for the audience at home. Okay, that's why we used, you know, some what's considered to be
the audience is at home because they're on drugs.
They're on rugs listening. We didn't care where they were.
Who cares?
But the point I'm trying to make is that those records were uncensored because they were made for private consumption.
I see. Okay? Now I'm going to segue here for a minute. What were your early influences? I know that you had English influences like Peter Sellers, George Martin, and all that. But
the Goon shows. The Goon shows. That was our primary English influence. Do you even know what they are?
The Goons, of course.
Yeah, of course. Peter Sellers is probably the most well-known.
That's why I brought up his name.
Okay,
It's
Spike
not fair to
Milligan.
the other Goonies.
Right. Anyway, they for a decade during the war years and beyond in England, they did a completely wacky, off-the-wall, cartoon-style, surrealist, satirical comedy show with a live audience. Okay, and they had 100 funny voices and recognizable characters, yakabakoo, and all kinds of catchphrases and things. And anybody who heard one Goon show was hooked for life. You wanted to hear them all, which
Well,
you can. For those of your listeners or viewers who don't know the Goon shows, you can Google it now. Google the Goons, and you'll see what that's all about. So they were a major influence. Now, I've written a book, and it's called "Where's My Fortune Cookie?"
I was going to talk to you about that, but go ahead.
Okay, but the reason I'm mentioning it is that I talk about the influences on my comedy chops and what got me hooked to doing comedy myself. First of all, it started with my parents.
Uh-oh.
I grew up part of the time there, but when I was more cognizant, when my little brain had developed a little bit more, I spent summers at my grandparents, the Yoders. I'm Amish and Irish ancestry. The Yoders in Goshen, Indiana. And they used to sit around the table. If my folks were there, my relatives, my aunts, my uncles, sit around the kitchen table. They would be drinking and smoking cigarettes and telling jokes, telling funny stories.
They grew up with funny stuff.
Yeah, so I immediately said, this is okay. This is fine. People getting together and making one another laugh and having fun.
Okay, but then there's an alternate factor of making a living.
You are. Unmute your speakers.
Who's that?
Output level.
I don't know, but it's the Virgin Mary. Is
There you are. Here you are. Hi, Phil.
Hi, honey. How are you?
I'm good.
In the middle of
just running tech. We probably have to turn the audio on.
Okay, you get
your level.
Selected. I will get back to that. You can ask me the question again.
Okay.
Tell me what to do. I'm going to be still now.
His audio is off.
Not my audio.
We'll have to get settled.
There he is.
Okay. Everybody's on. I'm on.
Hi, Dave.
I'm happy. Hi.
Hi, George.
We've already sold your royalties out, so like.
Oh, is that it?
Hi, how are you? I'm David Kessel. How are you?
Hi, David. Nice to be. Nice.
Great to be here. We were talking about that as a teen. I listened to you guys on KPFK and KMET in LA and got high at parties and all that. So it's kind of weird when you meet people that you really like and you really know, and it's like one of my friends said, "What do you say to these people?" I've gotten so high listening to your stuff.
No, most of the people say to us, "You saved my life. You saved my life." Not, and literally that happened in Vietnam because they sent over our records as children's records.
Yeah, they went to the PX just in case you had some kids over there with you.
Yeah, and so a couple of guys who are now our friends, like Roger Steffens, who is
Roger Steffens. I love him.
Yeah, he's the most. He is the greatest collector of reggae lore and records in history.
Speaking of that,
he discovered Firesign Theatre in a children's bin, and he says it saved his life over in Nam.
Wow.
He'd be going crazy, He would
unbelievable. When you talk about Roger Steffens, it reminds me of apparently our mutual friend Harvey Kubernick, who was a big contributor to Cave Hollywood.
Yeah.
Where did you meet Harvey? How long did that go on?
Oh my goodness, that goes way back.
I know. In the way I've known Harvey 50 years, so
it's something like that. Since 50 years ago is where we are right now. I mean, in a manner of speaking. The boomer of the 70s.
Wait a minute. Hold it. Biden has just been elected president of the United States of America. So I think we're going to be moving forward instead of back to the 50s where we've been stuck for the last 4 years.
It certainly has been Reagan.
Well, we weren't stuck musically in the 50s.
No. Although I listen to K-Surf Radio, which is golden oldies all the time, and it still makes me happy, you know. And the Beatles, you started to mention before Dave came on, asking about influences. David's heard this before, but as I wrote in my book, Where's My Fortune Cookie, I was influenced by Bob and Ray and by Ernie Kovacs.
Wow, Ernie, how come? He's cool, but how?
Ernie Kovacs?
Yeah.
He used to do a live show in New York every morning called the Early Morning Eyeball Show or something.
So he did the jamming, jump around stuff, like just like kind of like pre-Sid Caesar or whatever. You know.
Yes, definitely pre-Sid Caesar, but in that they had the same kind of sense of humor, maybe.
Zany.
Zany, not surreal,
Zany,
but
zany and satirical. Zany and satirical. He was more improvisational. He'd create a character and, you know, kind of go with it. Caesar had, of course, a great staff of writers.
Yeah, right.
Woody Allen and Mel Brooks, Carl Reiner, please.
Paul
and I got to work with Sid Caesar, Bergman, because our mutual friend, David, Richard Schulenberg, was managing Sid for a while when he was trying to get, you know, back on television. And so he put us all together to put together a presentation for CBS television. And that was great. I have plenty of Caesar stories, but I'll hold them.
Caesar was ambitious.
You know, you've got a couple of guys who go back in the industry a long time. There are these things on Facebook. There are these things on Facebook that say, you know, what was the first rock band you ever saw, you know, or who's the most famous person? And on my Facebook, of course, everybody's in show business because so they met everybody, you know. Yes, you try to think. Really, I just read a really good book about the making of Chinatown, the movie. Every bold-faced name in there, I knew, you know, had met, and I'm not even a Hollywood guy. I didn't even hang, you know. Amazing times.
But wait, David, you wrote a book called Fighting Clowns of Hollywood.
What y'all wanted to get to, but go ahead.
Firesign Theatre is all over the place.
Yeah, we are.
I'm ready for you guys.
At the moment, you can look at us on YouTube doing Fools in Space 20 years ago. So you can watch us actually working live. You can listen to us on 2 LP records, which not only unfold, but also produce a pop-up of more comedy and more stuff. I mean, you know, if we could have that, we didn't even get that in the 70s. They gave us a poster, but not a pop-up of another album.
Wow,
you know? I mean, that's truly cool. And we've got as Phil said, Fighting Clowns of Hollywood, which is both a book and a download.
I've done it all my life.
And a downer.
So you've got the Firesign Theatre recreating itself in between 79 and 81, and we did 4 giant shows at the Roxy, huge shows. So
the Roxy.
Mine is a memoir plus the scripts to those shows, but you can download those shows on top of that. So, and more to come. All
right, so let's see. What train of thought should we follow right now? I think I finished with Bob and Ray. Or it's Bob and Ray.
Okay, can I bring up a name? I want to bring up a name and see if it had any influence for you at all. Lenny Bruce.
Of course.
Of course.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No, that's what I wanted to hear about.
Well,
because Lenny is kind of like the precursor to where you guys like took the next level. In my world, it's like Lenny kind of was going down and died. Actually, that's how down he went.
Yeah. Well, Lenny was connected with it in his own way with beat. He was part of the beat movement.
The beat,
and we date ourselves as if not in the beat movement, like only a few days after the beat.
Just a few beats after. Boom,
a few beats away. Boom, boom. But Bruce, I mean, was the stand-up who read his own court findings. Right. He wasn't just reading the newspaper. He was engaged totally in his own life at the end. Right. But he was
like Mort Saul. Mort Saul.
Yeah, but Mort Saul, well, he came close. Yeah, I don't think Mort Saul was an influence on me. I never wanted to sit on a stool and gag about the newspaper. You know, it was much more the guy who was going out there and said talking in dialect. I won't do this, but we all can do these dialects, which Lenny Bruce did unabashedly. I mean, just you know. So in that way, definitely a precursor of Firesign. He loosened a lot, even though all his records were edited.
Right. What about all edited out? What about Red Fox? Red Fox, did he like enter your
Red Fox? No, except for television. Let me just say something about Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce, and David hinted on this, he was a legend. You know, it wasn't so much that I would go down in the village and watch him work, but his work would come out there. Let me clear my throat. Lenny Bruce's work would come out there and kind of permeate the comic atmosphere, because he was so daring and so out of the box. You know? And so there was a certain amount of like envy, I think, that he could do this. And it was shocking when the police moved in on him and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he was a trailblazer and a breaker, whatever that word is.
Okay, what about Red Fox? Does he come into your gig, or is that just
only from my perspective? Only because he did what were known as like dirty albums.
Right.
Yeah. Okay? Yeah. He was in that context of dirty albums. There were a bunch of women who did them.
Yeah, party albums, you know.
Party albums. That's it. I did a radio program of party albums once. You know, they were so risque. You know, they were the kind of things you'd play at a very polite party where no one was going to take off their clothes, but everybody was going to laugh. You know.
Right.
Really funny songs, all of that kind of thing, songs and sketches. I have a library, you know, of those records too. Yeah.
You know, I got to go on record as saying I took my wife to see Red Fox in Vegas, and it was one of the dirtiest, funniest shows we've ever seen.
There you go. There you go.
I know. Well, stand-up got to be, when we were 20 years ago, we premiered on XM Satellite, and we're doing, you know, this is Firesign Theatre. We're doing what we always do. I think it's far out there. And they had us booked first, you know, coming after Jack Benny. Not exactly. And then they put us on the Comedy Channel, where everyone was talking about parts of bodies that you don't want to know about. You know, I mean, never. It was extraordinary. I couldn't turn it on because my kids were little, and I couldn't turn it on until just before we went on the air. Called it back and said, "What are you doing to us?"
Well, David, if you remember, the people who started XM Satellite Radio approached us to help them create their comedy channel.
Wow.
And what we proposed was old radio comedy shows. Okay, almost everything that we proposed was not blue. You know,
yes, that's right. Yeah,
it was comedy, the roots of comedy and comedy today. But then that, you know,
what they would say now, they would say it was curated.
By
the Firesign Theatre.
Hey, did you guys ever have anything like going for the Marx Brothers or Groucho or any of that? Did that ever come up, or is that like?
Well, people, because we were a foursome, people, you know, were talking about us, relating us to the Marx Brothers. But W.C. Fields was my comedy hit from that time.
Indeed,
yes, indeed. We had him. Phil did him on every. I mean, we all did it, but Phil did him on the first couple of albums. He was always there.
Are we in Goshen yet?
And in Next World, You're on Your Own. In that album, we do the whole thing, Mr. Mucklehoney.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, Mr. Mucklehoney. He walks into a giant display of glass, which crashes. One of Fields' fun. See, Fields would dare to do that.
Yes.
make fun of a blind man.
Yes, that's right.
And really get fabulous gags out of it, you know. So yeah, in that sense, I mean, I love the Marx Brothers, you know, but in the real pushing the humor, he pushed it.
Yeah.
Okay, now the Marx Brothers were surrealistic comedians. If you look at their movies, it's impossible. The situations are impossible. The lines are crazy and double entendre. It's really fast paced. So I think that they had a great influence on us from that regard.
They had good writers too.
Oh, very good. But they had very good writers. And in fact, Peter Bergman pointed out to me that they used to do a show up at the Libero in Santa Barbara in order to work out the gags they were going to do in the movies. And we did that.
Yeah, we actually, that's right. We did. And we did it at the Libero in Santa Barbara. And doing it, we knew we were recreating what the Marx Brothers had done at that very stage.
Give me the question I was going to ask you guys.
Okay, go ahead and answer it. And we'll tell you the question.
Okay, very good. That's good. It was between, as musician, we jam, and then there's sheet music. So in comedy, you're either jamming or you're working on a script.
Both. We did both. On the radio shows, we absolutely did both. We would all bring in something that we'd written whenever we wanted to.
Right.
And it could be a 4-man script, could be a 2-man script. The Chinchilla Show with Phil Austin and me is an example. David brought in Mark Time, which is the beginning of an adventure that David had over the years, culminating in an album, The Adventures of Mark Time. But we did it first off of a script that David brought in that we were reading with minimal rehearsal. Maybe
no rehearsal, really.
No rehearsal.
I think our agreement. Our agreement on Dear Friends on that doesn't, you know, because we did 12 shows in a row, and then the next few months later we came back with Let's Eat, which was another group of 12 shows, and our basic agreement was drink beforehand. You come in as loose as possible.
Yeah.
Never rehearse anything.
4 hands of whiskey.
Yeah. I mean, you know.
4 fingers. I meant to say 4 fingers of whiskey.
Not 4 hands.
Right. Drink beforehand. 4 fingers of whiskey.
And hand the funny thing was to hand you, Phil, a script that you'd never seen, or Peter that you'd never seen before, and now you're on the air with this. There's the theme music. Go.
That's him.
You know? So we would improvise off of that, and we often felt like we were 4 jazz musicians, you know, gigging together.
That's an incredible thing. I come from a jazz family.
Oh,
that is the improvisation is very amazing that you say that. Now, I want to know, when I was a kid, getting high to you guys on KMET and KPFK, was that all jamming?
Yeah, pretty much so. And we also
good. It felt like it.
I want to credit. Let me say KMET specifically, because that was a show that Peter and I were doing.
That's right.
And it was like Radio Free Oz, and you know, and I was his partner on Radio Free Oz, and we had we read Winnie the Pooh and the Bible, and because it was Sunday morning, we read anything we thought was religious. And then the Phils couldn't resist the show. It was on the air. They could walk through the door. It was easy. And they called themselves the Finger Brothers.
The Finger Brothers, yes, yeah. There were our fingers again, yes.
And they just showed up in the middle of this show. And was it improvised? It was, you know, yes, it was.
Improvising.
We were, improvisation to me has an emphasis on the imp. Okay?
Yeah.
It's impish. It's a tumbler, you know, in Yiddish, somebody who kind of breaks the pattern in order to elicit a kind of a chaotic comedy, and that was kind of the what's the word I want, the forgiveness, the promise of what we were all doing together. But I want to say one thing. I want to credit our engineer on the Dear Friend shows. David's nodding because, you know, I'm going to be speaking about the real Earl Jive. That was his name. He was a DJ, I guess, and had a big radio background. But what he would do is he would drop in sound effects or music at absolutely unknown places, and we would have to respond to that as well.
Wow. Coming through, you know. A train would come
Train's
through.
coming through, right?
Or suddenly you'd be on echo, 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 echo.
Yeah, we'd
echo.
hop aboard. Woo hoo.
Where are we now? Yeah, he's on the cover of the album of the
Dope
Humor of the 70s album. He's lying on the floor along with Bill McIntyre, who was our producer, who just passed away. God bless him. He was with us over a long period of time. One of our last tours, it was horrible, but he managed it. It was a terrible tour. It was, have you ever been in a town in Northern California where it's 104?
Yeah.
And you don't know anybody? You know,
how many people were in the audience? Hey,
beer. If you're out of beer,
it was well, we love Bill, and he's passed, but the Live Real Jive is there. He shows up on Facebook all the time,
and his wife Beverly Hills.
Yes,
his wife is Beverly Hills.
That's right. And Tynica, my ex-wife, is on that cover, and so is Phil Austin's ex-wife on that cover. So it's a whole gang of us around the table.
On the new album, right?
New album.
New album.
The cover of the new album. New double album.
New album, old material.
Yeah. Paul McCartney would always say, "New album out, and John would go like, "Oh, we do."
The old material. It's funny that, ironically, I guess it's ironic, Phil, I'm not sure, but that the title of the album, Dope Humor of the 70s, is the title of a cut, an ad that we did at the time on the show.
That's right.
I can't remember it. I can never remember anything exactly, but it's like the unbelievable Phil and Phil together again. You'll laugh. You'll it makes fun of Cheech and Chong. It brings everybody together. We have
to credit Taylor Jessen,
yes,
who actually I think inspired this album, the concept of this re-release.
How does it come out like right now out of nowhere?
Well, it's on what's it called? Stand Up Records.
Stand Up Records.
Yep, and it's released later this month, but you can pre-order it.
November 27th.
And this contact was made. Let's really credit Taylor, because it was his feeling that we should do an LP album that we hadn't done. They're popular. They're selling again. And that you guys, the Firesign Theatre, should do that kind of album. We said, go ahead. And he modeled it on the album that we did in 1970, the Dear Friends album, which I edited because we all agreed that we needed some airplay. And we had just produced a 38-minute album, which people were having to jump the needle over, this to get it on the air. So that original album was to get us some airplay. This is just totally to have fun with, I think.
Okay, it just came to me. I had no idea, but Bill Dana, I had his album, Chief Astronaut and all that stuff.
Yeah, I know him.
And they said when he came, he's in the comedy bit. It's like he's the astronaut who came back, and they said, what about the world crisis? And he goes, what world crisis? I've been out of town.
Yeah. Well, he was very clever. He retired early to Hawaii, if I'm not mistaken.
I interviewed him on Wilshire Boulevard. He had an apartment on Wilshire Boulevard for a while, and I interviewed him as part of that series that I was trying to do for NPR. I was trying to do it was called Comedy from I don't know. It had a good name. What can I tell you?
Right.
Comedy from Cylinder to CD. Okay.
Oh,
so it was to cover basically the LP period in comedy, which I had researched and really knew really well. And so we did a pilot, which was called The Rise of the Stand-Up. And that was my chance to interview, the kind Bill Dana and any number of other people from that.
Bob Newhart.
Yeah,
I didn't get to Newhart, but I did get to
Shelley.
She was Shelley Berman. Yeah, Shelley Berman. That was mainstream Q followers. Thank you very much. It's my son entering. My son who listens to podcasts. Isn't that great? He listens to podcasts all the time. He's just passing through.
I thought podcasts were exclusively for whales. I mean,
not here.
Oh, I'm so out of it, you know.
No, our pods are at home here. The pod people,
body snatchers. Oh, they're for the body snatcher pods. Those people.
Yeah.
All right. I got a question for you guys.
Okay.
And it's
you better have a question.
It's kind of personal for me, but I went over your Wikipedia thing just to see if there was something I didn't get, and this was interesting to me. That James William Gershio and John Hammond were responsible for helping you at Columbia, because I grew up as a teenager working with Jeff Gershio and Mark Gershio in a band, and we were in junior high school when Jimmy, which I called him Jimmy, not James William Gershio.
Yeah, Jimmy, we call him Jimmy.
He earned that moniker, but he had just done the Chicago stuff. He'd come off of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and I was in a band with those guys. So what did James William Gershio and John Hammond do for you at Columbia?
Well, Gershio managed us for a while.
Whoa!
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. At the very first time of the first Chicago album.
Yeah,
exactly at that time. And also, what was the other one? Illinois Speed Press.
Yeah, and he had like Blood, Sweat, and Tears he had just come off of, Illinois Speed Press and all that. Yeah, so Jimmy.
Rob Lewin, my friend Rob Lewin, whom I've known since grade school, was in that group. And we wrote, remember, David, we wrote the liner notes for their album.
That album, yeah.
Which is really funny. I read them the other day. It was really funny. So you see, at that time, Columbia Records, where we did our work, was really kind of a friendly bohemian opportunity. The music,
Garfunkel, and Simon and Garfunkel, right? Dylan Bird, Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, the music.
Everybody was there.
Yeah, and it was before the explosion of platinum records and all of that stuff, you know. But everybody was there, and it was like a home. You know, and it was very cool. Glenn Campbell played on our first album in the little orchestra, because we had live music.
Well, yeah, Jimmy knew everybody.
And
so you could easily. That was the Wrecking Crew. That was the Wrecking Crew that played on our first album.
Yeah. Yes, the Wrecking Crew was on our first album, waiting for the electrician or someone like him.
Do you remember the musicians from the Wrecking Crew? Me and my brother, or my brother and I, if I want to get an A in English, are the only guys who are second generation Wrecking Crew. I grew up going to all those sessions. My dad, Barney Kessler, played on a lot of those records.
Oh, got it.
So of course he did, and he was more than just your dad. And I'm glad you mentioned him, because major
I wouldn't be here without him.
Yeah, but yeah, that was Jimmy's work at the very beginning.
Back to Jimmy.
We left management at it was Epimetheus Management. It was called.
Larry
we left Epimetheus Management, I think, mainly because they tried to send us through the agents and all of that. They tried to send us on tour with the Beach Boys.
Oh, and the Maharishi. Do you remember that?
You guys with the Maharishi.
They wanted us to open for the Maharishi.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Now that we could have imagined, that I could imagine doing, but standing on stage, the four of us standing on stage in front of 25,000 people, all saying "Beach Boys."
Yeah, I know.
Boys. Oh, was not a cheerful idea. They never knew what to do with us.
Tubes. The Proctor and Bergman played at a hockey rink up in Canada with 25,000 people. Tubes. Oh man.
Are you talking about the band The Tubes?
Yeah.
Yeah. White Punks on Dope and all that.
Yeah. Oh, they were great.
Oh, they were wonderful.
But you can't open. You can't open for these groups,
No, it's opening for the Monkees. It's not going to happen. It did happen.
We could open for the Monkees. We could have opened for the Monkees. Bert Schneider. The first movie I ever did was BBS Productions, A Safe Place, created by Henry Jagham, written and directed, with Tuesday Weld and Orson Welles and Jack Nicholson and me.
And him?
Wow. Yes, and me. Oh. Introducing me. And that was Bert Schneider. And he.
Yeah, well, the Monkees were they were all around. Mickey particularly was on Radio Free Oz at the Mushroom every week.
I'd forgotten that.
Oh, yeah, we have him at least. Mickey was there more than once.
Wow.
You know, Pete did interviews with everybody. Pete did an interview with the Maharishi.
Wow.
David Crosby, the Maharishi. And
David Crosby and the Maharishi, that's an interesting get together.
The guy who did the Hare Krishna guy.
George Harrison.
He closed one of our shows, not George Harrison, but the guy he was doing, you know, Hare Rama Hare Krishna.
Oh, the actual Hare Krishna guy.
Yeah, the actual guy, of course.
Not Allen Ginsberg.
No, Alan never made it to Radio Free Oz.
Ginsberg?
Yeah, no, never made it to Radio Free Oz. But he's
Did Paul Krasner make it? Because Peter and Paul.
Paul Krasner. He may have been. I know he was on early Oz because he's thanked in that long credit from '67.
I think we should explain.
We knew everybody. Everybody was on Radio Free Oz in Los Angeles. All the lefties, all the liberals, all the hippies. They were all there in 50 years.
I was listening. I'm one of those guys, and I was listening.
Yeah, well, there, you know, and the little guys. Thank God, the little guys are still with us because the guys that were sleeping on the floor of the Dear Friends broadcast are in their 80s now.
That's right. They're sleeping under a thin layer of earth right now.
Unfortunately.
But I think we should explain for people who, believe it or not, may not know what the Frankenstein Theater is, that when we did Radio Free Oz originally, which was Peter Bergman's show at KPFK, and we moved it to a live venue, a club called the Magic Mushroom. Okay,
and the Valley.
That show is like a precursor of Prairie Home Companion. It was like a psychedelic Prairie Home Companion.
Wow.
And you know, Peter was the host, and it opened it up to, we could have interviews, we could have musicians on playing, and then every week the Firesign Theatre contributed a half-hour goon show style presentation skit as part of the show. And also we participated in various panels and pretended we were, you know, other famous people. And
of course. Of course. Now, I've got a weird question for you. When did this, like every parent's nightmare, when did this become an actual, like, financially acceptable experience?
Columbia Records.
Well, yeah, but actually become when our second album was picked up in I think in '68 it was hopeless, but I think by '69 it was turning because of Nick Danger.
Aha, you're right.
When we came out in '70 with Dwarf was a hit.
Dwarf was big for you guys.
But
yeah, well, I mean, in terms of where we got in, somebody asked me the other day, what did you do? I said, we looked at Billboard. Are you kidding? The Hot 100. We were a rock act.
Yeah.
We looked exactly the same at sales, exactly the same way as Blood, Sweat, and Tears did, you know?
Right.
We were known as the jesters of the rock and roll era. And I mean ERROR. And I do want to credit John McClure, who is no longer with us, but John McClure, who was one of the suits at Columbia. They were going to drop us after our first album, Waiting for the Electrician or someone like that.
I brought up Jimmy Guercio and John Hammond.
Fine, but you know, it's like they're not selling, and who are these people? And we don't understand them, and they're doing a half-hour a side record. I mean, what are we going to do? And so the second record, How Can You Be in Two Places at Once, which has pictures of John Lennon and Groucho Marx. We got permission to use it as All Hail Marx Lennon. That album had on the second side, as David pointed out, Nick Danger, Third Eye, which people could understand. It was going to be a radio serial that we wanted to do at what? KRLA, was it, Dave? Do you remember?
KMET, actually.
KMET. Yeah. And then they changed the format of the station to Hasidic cowboy songs.
Something like that, yeah. Lots of harmonica, I think.
Lots of harmonica and cowbell.
Yeah, and cowbell.
Okay. Anyway, so we said, well, we've got this skit, this pilot, let's put it on the second side of the record. And that gave people something to grab onto because they knew what we were making fun of. They knew the context which we were exploding and destroying and reinventing. And John McClure, he said to us when that album, he said to his fellow suits, Clive Davis and the rest, in a meeting, he said, "You've got to release this next album. These guys are geniuses. They've invented the long form comedy album." And he said, because he was the head of the spoken arts division, I will sign them on to the spoken arts division. Now, David, can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but because of that, we had unlimited studio time. We did not have to book and pay for studio time.
And
for that, we gave up a higher royalty. I was suddenly reduced to a duke.
Yes, yes.
David, I think you became
actually, in terms of the marketplace, the rock and roll marketplace, the way you make money is A, mechanicals, which means you get money for every record pressed, and as you know, and B, you get money because you own the copyright on the cut, and that gets you money from AFTRA. I mean, from
that's interesting because you have to like copyright it and you publish it, and somebody's a writer technically in order to get paid.
Only if you're a singer.
Yeah,
comedians, we couldn't ever make any money from radio play.
Then you had bad attorney.
No one would represent our comedy.
No, I remember.
You know, there copyright it.
Well, yeah, but it has to be. For a long time, comedy cuts were not considered to be, they were considered to be promotional.
Oh, not musical, and therefore
musical, promotional. And so nobody got any royalties. I mean, Steve Martin didn't get any royalties until he did the musical, Cleopatra song or whatever.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Whatever. Yeah. Right.
We did music. We had a lot of music in our repertoire integrated into our albums, original songs and crazy parodies and things. But it wasn't until really we did the 8 Shoes at the Roxy. David referred to it earlier, which was an all musical show. Okay, with a live band and everything.
So it didn't all like
Fighting Clowns.
Yeah, it was called I beg your pardon. Fighting Clowns of Hollywood featured the 8 Shoes.
Right.
The 8 Shoes were the 4 men.
There was a musical group, and we sang a lot of songs. We had a band. It was a musical review.
Yeah, but even that didn't get played much on the radio. A few things did. We did a political parody about Carter song and Reagan. Hey, Reagan.
Afghanistan got some play.
Oh, Afghanistan. All of the themes that were in that album, I recommend to people to listen to the Fighting Clowns of Hollywood album, which has an album cover that was.
I love that name, by the way. That's great. I've lived my whole life fighting clowns.
That's what we felt. The cover was by Phil Hartman. Phil Hartman.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the themes of that album, I don't know how many years ago, are still pertinent. A war in Afghanistan, oil interests.
Oh yeah. And that whole period of time, to broaden it out, really that whole period of time was very political for us. 79, 80, we're going into the 80 election, the Reagan election.
How about today? Important. Talk about political. It's the same gig. It's just take.
And we took that through 3 shows, each one of which should have been an album. In other words, we did one show called Joey's House, which was about a family that lived their entire life as a reality show on television. Yes, this is 1980. Okay, we did this musical review about the war between Russia and America.
Yeah,
and I don't know. The last one was
the Owl and Octopus show.
The Owl and Octopus. It was about floods of octopuses in Southern California.
And owls. Who knew it would be a great success?
So those go to Bandcamp, and you can find in Bandcamp, you can at Firesign Theatre, you can find all of those shows from that period of time, and you can also find my book, which tells the inside story.
Tell us the name of your books, please, and where to buy them.
It is. There are actually 6 Firesign books, going on 7, 8, or 9. The literature is really expanded. This is the what you're hearing in Dope Humor of the 70s is part of the filling in of the psychedelic era, which was like our first 5 or 6 years.
Well, I'm glad to remember those years. I lost them while listening to you guys.
Fortunately, they took a lot of pictures and recordings of us at the time. That's the only way you can keep track.
I should mention that what we're really talking about is if you go to the FiresignTheatre.com site, you will see all of the stuff that is presently available. Taylor Jessen, again, our archivist, who helped us sell our archives to the Library of Congress a couple of years ago. Okay, we are in the Library of Congress with Jimi Hendrix and God knows everybody. The history of vaudeville.
Liberace, maybe.
Huh?
I said maybe even Liberace.
Oh, indeed, Walter.
That was an attempt at humor, and so I'm fired from the gig. But anyway.
No. So anyway, he put together an album, a book, which was about our radio years, which is fascinating, and you should buy it. It's called The Duke of Madness Motors, and it has in it an MP3 of like 80 hours of our radio shows. Okay, and I think he cannibalized some of that in order to fill out the album that we're just releasing.
Yeah, there's selections, but that were never released on LP.
Exactly. That's
but
right.
If you want to stumble your way through 85 hours of Firesign, that MP3 people just keep it running all the time, tune it up, listen to it, tune it down.
To go back to your new album, which is available on Stand Up Records, which I assume is www.standuprecords.com, if I've got it right. You can buy your album there. But I'm really curious how you decided, like, what piece, like, I've got a lot of tunes, I've got like boxes of the stuff, but how do you determine that it's like, okay, we like these pieces for this release?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it was all Taylor's choices.
Yes, Taylor pretty much made the choices. He passed by us, of course. Yeah. I mean, we do communicate, it was tipped off by the commercial that we recorded at the time, Dope Humor of the 70s. Yeah. And from that point, he just went for things that weren't on the Columbia album. And I can tell you that I wouldn't have put them on the Columbia album in 1970 because they were, they're a little, even though they were live on the radio.
Wait a minute. What do you mean a little?
I mean, a little. There's some stuff that we did live on the air, man, that you wouldn't put on an LP.
Oh, well, that's good.
Until now.
That's good. Yeah. Yes. Oh my goodness.
So this is kind of like your greatest hits that you never had a hit, and you want them to come out now because it's like, no, this is good stuff.
Well, we're in the midst of our greatest hits. And there are more to come next year. There'll be a book of short stories of Phil Austin's.
Yeah.
There'll be at least another big download. Plus, it's George Tirebiter's 100th birthday this year on the 7th, and we're going to be celebrating Tirebiter's birthday with a big release of Tirebiter material.
You should also mention that if people download Dope Humor of the 70s, they will get an additional bonus of other cuts. Remember, and
yes, and I would have. That was a commercial, and I thought you should have delivered it, Phil. Can we roll that back?
No, I'm trying to get you guys to do the commercial.
Roll that back. A little more sell, Phil.
Let's rewind. Sell the album.
Yeah.
Hey, if you really want to get into Dope Humor of the 70s, You don't have to get high. You just have to say, "Hi, Mom, would you give me some money so I can buy an album?" And that album, you can hide it from your parents if you download it.
There you go. That's what I was looking for.
And if you buy the vinyl album, maybe you can sell it on eBay for some really big bucks. Was that better?
That was, that's a take. Orson, did you like that? Oh, that's my son, Orson.
Can I digress for a minute? I want to digress for a minute because you guys are so important.
Tell me what we have been digressing.
No, I want to know how you all four came together.
Oh, the Mexican Free Air Force, and that's a story, a really untold story.
Okay, very fast. Peter arrived in Los Angeles on a motorcycle in 1966 during the very first fund drive at KPFK. He walked into the studio on the air and immediately raised thousands of dollars. He was then given a radio show that with a man named Paul Robbins, who was his first co-host. He was given a late night, I mean really late night, like 11 to 2 show.
Not for musicians, that's morning.
Yeah, right.
But so Pete was on, and and it was a call-in show. But he would start the show with like random stuff, and
then, my God, the call-in crap.
And then, people would call and say, "Mr. Wizard, I just dropped a lot of acid. What should I do?" And people were calling from all over. Well, that show was produced in the studio by Phil Austin. Okay, wow. There's the first member. I'm driving down the street, parking in my driveway, listening to this amazing show at this radio station I used to work for. And so I'm there in the studio with me, and now it's Phil, me, and Pete, and we're all laughing and we're listening to the phone, and then Mr. Proctor arrives in town just at the right moment.
I did.
Serendipity. That's what we're
and again, it's a long story, which you can read in my book, Where's My Fortune Cookie? But the brief part is I was involved in the curfew riot, the Sunset Strip riot.
Oh, that shit, yeah.
Okay, and at one point I sat down in front of Pandora's box while the cops were trying to move us away. We will not be moved. And I sat down on an open issue of the Free Press, LA Free Press, pulled it out from under my ass, and it was a picture of Peter Bergman. And it said, KPFK newsman Peter Bergman interviews returning Vietnam War vets. I said, KPFK Peter Bergman. And then so after the whole riot was over and everything, the next day I called up KPFK, got in touch with Peter Bergman, and he said, who I'd gone to Yale with, by the way, who had written the lyrics for 2 musicals by Austin Pendleton that I starred in, Tom Jones and Booth is Back in Town. And so I'm reconnecting with Peter after the Yale years, and he says, yeah, I do. I'm the Wizard of Oz. And I thought, well, he's really lost it. I'm sad. And anyway, that's my introduction. He said, come on down and play with us on the show. I go in and I meet these 2 bozos.
Yep, the other guys are there because, and we're just waiting for Phil to show up.
Yeah,
we're waiting for Phil to show up because he's an actor. He's a young, attractive actor. He's got some talent. Peter had never acted before in his life, by the way. He was just an amazing voice in your head.
Yeah.
On stage, he was a writer, not an actor.
He was a twisted straight man.
And Phil Austin was a young actor, and I was a young actor, so we were sort of an acting company.
Yeah.
And Peter, who was a host at the moment, when we were now all there, it says, we're going to do the Oz Film Festival. And we said, what's that? He said, well, you're all going to play different filmmakers, and we'll show some movies, and we'll have fun on the air. And so we all took different characters, and as we walked into the studio, fateful moment, ding dong, Peter says, can I introduce you as the Oz Firesign Theatre?
Wow.
And we said, sure, let's do the show. You know, I mean, we never gave it a moment's thought, really.
And again, for those out there who may not know who the hell we are, we're all fire signs. I'm a Leo, David's a Sagittarian, Ossman was an Aries, and Peter is a Sagittarian. Fire signs.
Well, I found that interesting when I did some research on you guys, that was actually the case. It wasn't just like a hallucination. It was like, you go like, okay, we're all fire signs.
No,
it was.
We're all fire. We
happened
are all fire signs.
And
you can see us in our personas on the Don't Crush That Dwarf, Hand Me the Pliers album. The artwork by Bob Grossman, who was Peter Bergman's roommate at Yale, and who went on to really pioneer the airbrush drawings.
So you went to Yale, correct?
Yeah, this was at Yale.
Okay, so your parents' dream was for you to go to Yale, be a lawyer, and you ended up doing this.
Oh no, go to Yale because of the drama school.
Oh, you know what? They've got my uncle went to Yale drama.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yeah, and it was a great time for Yale drama, for that, because we were in a thing we called the Dramat, the undergraduate arm of the drama school, and I was working with Sam Waterston, Pendleton, Peter Bergman, Skip Hinnant, Tom Ligon. Let me see any other famous people. Joan Van Ark. Anyway, a slew of
really good school of drama.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
we're going to go on and do some pretty amazing things.
So
the drama school was jealous of us because we were doing, again, like the Firesign Theatre, we were breakout. We were doing really extraordinary work, and the drama school was kind of hadn't broken away from its stodgy ways.
Okay.
No, and it was graduate school. When I was at Pomona a couple of years before this, and at Pomona I was with Richard Chamberlain, with Robert Towne, who wrote Chinatown, the screenwriter, Anthony Zerbe. I mean, I can run down the same list of names that Phil can, of people that went on to become really talented and famous people in the business.
John Badham, who directed Saturday Night Fever. He was our stage manager.
Funny guy too.
Peter Hunt, who we just lost, famous director, directed 1776.
So anyway, the drama training helped you to get into the jamming of the improv and the groove, because it's the same thing. Either you're reading a line, doing an acting job, or just free associating on a groove. Is that pretty much it?
This is the answer I always got to give. No matter what you're doing, you're writing. If you're improving, you're writing.
Correct.
What we did was to sit around a table and improv until we had written the right line, and then we'd move on and improv until we got the next right line. On the radio, we gave up all the rightness and threw in serendipity and and chance and whatever might happen, because it was a totally different way of working. But working that way allowed us to develop out of individual material or a collective madness, where we were going professionally to the next album. We needed to work all that out. We needed to improv to get to the place where we had a script, which we then took into the studio, and guess what? Improved.
Yeah.
Because we had then to give the script, give the writing
script and use
character.
Yeah, bring the script alive and see where it takes you during the actual, recording process. And again, because we had free studio time, thank you, John McClure, we could bring material in and then go back, to the writing, having been now inspired by what we discovered in the studio, laying down what we had. Uh-oh, they're on to me. Oh, there they are. Uh-oh, it's a black one too. It's a black helicopter. Uh-oh. Oh my God. Okay, get the cow in, honey, before they cut his next mouth. Get the cow in. Oh, I hope she does.
I hope she does.
Oh yeah, and I did want to point out.
Yes.
David mentioned some of it. The Marx Brothers. Back to the Marx Brothers. We had a club that we worked in called the Improv. No, we had a club that we worked in called the
The Ash Grove.
The Ash Grove. Right.
Right.
It was burned down a couple of times, by the way, because the guy who ran it was kind of a communist and labor movement guy. Okay, the Ash Grove, which is now the Improv and has been for decades now. But we could go in with material that we wanted to record and we perform it, and that would help to refine what it was that made the audience laugh or what they didn't understand, you see? So, and again, the benefit being that when we're ready, we can go into the studio. Oh,
yeah,
man.
Once we were over the hump with Dwarf, then we felt that we had a yearly
contractual obligation for an album a year, right?
And that like any other rock and roll artist, we had to promote it.
Yeah, sure.
There was no choice in that. We didn't have an actual theater, so we had to go and on the road and do that kind of thing that we
did some big shows too.
And we did big shows at the Ash Grove. We were working with solo guitar artists usually.
Right.
You know, because we had a little set that we opened up on stage. And we did The Giant Rat of Sumatra, which was a parody. And we did The Sword and the Stoned.
Oh, The Sword and the Stoned.
Which was
I recall all this stuff.
A King Arthur's Round Table parody. You know, and then finally the very last show we did, after working our way through these, and we're now just ready for our first album to come out, and I'm talking about developing material. That very last Magic Mushroom show was a day on television.
Wow.
Yeah,
that was the underlying fabric for Don't Crush That Dwarf. 2 years later, we worked on that material for 2 years until it ended up in that album. Wow. So it's really, you know, improv. If you want to improv, don't go to school. Don't pay anybody any money. Don't look into that. Go and work at the Renaissance Fair. You will be somebody else for 12 or 15 hours, and then you'll learn to improvise close-up magic.
And that's where we also met.
That's how I learned.
That's where we met the Flying Karamazov brothers.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And we did our Shakespearean parody, Firesign Theatre, Shakespeare's Lost Comedy, Anything You Want To. I think it had a different name then, but that was the first time we performed our Shakespearean comedy. Was at the Renaissance Pleasure Fair.
Yep. It was called, it was called, what was it called then? The Count of Monte Cristo. Waiting for the Count of Monte Cristo.
Waiting for the Count of Monte Cristo, or someone like him.
Which was an entire parody on A Long Day's Journey into Night.
Is that right?
Yeah, sure. Because the dad, all he ever played was the Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah, that was it. Was like one of those fated things. All you could do was one role, and you played it for years. And
right.
I always associate that. That's why you get four guys. You get four completely different associations.
And that piece, the Shakespeare piece, we did on National Public Radio.
Wow.
With live music. And a wraparound. I played an Australian director who had, directed the piece, the radio, and also a whole story about the communist society lifestyle versus capitalist lifestyle. We posited that the actors were staying in a hotel that was divided into East and West, communist on one side, capitalist on the other, with a line drawn down the middle. Okay.
Kremlin.
All right. And then the Shakespeare piece was part of that.
Wow.
And it later was released as an album, and then in a book form, which is an hysterical book about, a Shakespearean scholarly book of the studies of the origins of the ye old Firesign Theatre, right? And the Shakespeare work. And it's a big, beautiful book, again, available. And the book, what's really funny about the book is it's almost entirely footnotes.
Well, I was going to say, some of the very last writing, this is in anything you want to from Bear Manor Books, some of Peter's very last writing, and he was not well. I might even say he was dying. When he wrote elaborate, lengthy 200-word footnotes that are hysterically funny.
Oh.
And Austin too. Some of his very last writing went into that book because they were gone shortly after. And
I didn't know. Is that
yeah? Well, and Peter's notes. I said, Peter, I didn't know he was even ill. Peter, you got to get me some notes. You got to get me the notes. Everybody has to be in this book. Everybody has to write notes for this book. And his were just really, really, really terrific. So it's another way of getting just that kind. And Peter was not a Shakespearean fan.
No, he hated Shakespeare.
Yeah, he hated Shakespeare. So, that was part of the great humor of this. Is he would never like Shakespeare. We always felt very uncomfortable.
Well, Shakespeare's a tongue twister. Thou couldst that I might. That it's like no.
I think he played his role as Henry Kissinger, as I recall.
Right? That's right, he did.
He was the count. He's the count, but he was playing as Henry Kissinger.
Yeah, and of course, my background and David's background, Austin's background, all involved acting in Shakespearean plays.
Indeed, therefore, to wit.
Yeah, so it was really fun to be able to use our arcane knowledge of the
brings me to a question.
Pentameter,
If you guys are all Shakespearean, does it help you in your vocal presentation when you are being live in a club or something? Do you feel like you're projecting because of your drama?
Back to the Renaissance fair.
What'd you say?
The Renaissance fair. No microphones, no microphones. You got to be heard over 10,000 people. No, yeah.
We've all had to do that. It's true, but we also had to learn microphone techniques.
Right.
And what was so different about what we did as performers is that we had to play so many characters, that we learned how to use our voices in order to, create a girl, or like a Coco, or a George Tirebiter, and those vocal tricks expanded the power of what we were doing.
Right.
Stimulate people's imagination. Yeah, and a blend of audio and visual.
I think on stage, in one of those Roxy shows, we had costume racks.
We did.
We had 2 rows of costume racks. So
like the Rolling
literally,
Stones, huh?
I think I played 40 characters. And each one of them had well, that's my pair of glasses for this character.
Yeah, that's right.
I need a pipe. Where's my? Let me see. Where's my here it is. My Martian.
And also, David, if you remember, I used to buy most of our props,
Hollywood
costumes from the Hollywood Toy Store.
Yeah.
Okay. On Hollywood Boulevard?
Yeah, on Hollywood Boulevard, right next to Frederick's of Hollywood. And I got masks. I would buy masks, and then I could cut the bottom of the mask off, but you'd have a mask on your face, and those made for really quick changes. As well.
As we played, may I say that we played? Those would be Asian American characters. That
we did with those. Yes, because then the Japanese invasion
these days.
Japanese invasion was happening musically and culturally. The Godzilla movies were monster hits, if you will. So we minimized Japanese culture as it influenced American culture.
That's amazing.
On this very election day, there are huge numbers of Firesign quotes coming in.
Wow.
On Facebook.
On Facebook. It's really, I went through like a list of 25 just ambient lines that reflected their mood of the day. Golly, Mudhead. Just something that said how pleased they were and found a line from our work that expressed that and sent it out. It's just
I think that's
really a burst of it today.
What shows you what a part of the culture you guys are.
Yeah, we definitely influence.
We appreciate that.
And that's why the Don't Crush That Dwarf, Hand Me the Pliers was added to the historical recording collection at the Library of Congress about 10 years ago, maybe?
No, yeah, 8 now, I think.
8 years
7
ago.
or 8
And
years.
then they purchased our archives during the George W. Bush administration and flew us down for a ceremony,
Gee, that's
lunch, you know, and Martha and the Vandellas was being
Martha was there, yeah.
I think I'm very concerned about what did you guys have for lunch?
Let's see, what did I have for lunch?
I don't know. I just saw it and an opportunity to get a joke.
Library of Congress special, I think it must have been.
Let's see. All I remember was that the menu was 160 pages.
Oh, that place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took us an hour to make our choices.
Fortunately, he reads Russian, though, so it was
I wanted to know this. You know?
Я с вами могу.
I got it. We got it just today. Yesterday. I got something forwarded from Firesign. You know, from Firesign.com, entirely in Russian.
Really?
Did you see it? No.
You have to send it to me. I haven't seen that.
No,
Yeah.
it was a voter notification from Russia to not vote for anybody.
And I heard today that Putin is probably going to have to step down because he has Parkinson's.
Really?
So,
well, that's not our problem. Moving right along.
Yep. Your last question is.
Dabe.
What?
What? That means let's go.
This could be bittersweet, but I read that you guys were nominated for Comedy Record of the Year like 3 times,
Right.
and you didn't win? Or did you win one? And if you didn't win, who did you lose to? Who the heck was like there to beat your ass?
Weird Al Yankovic, and the 2,000-year-old man.
Yeah,
Carl
couldn't
Roger
object to
Well,
that.
a 2,000-year-old man's a tough one to beat.
Oh, please, man.
And they thanked us from stage.
They did.
They did. They
They
acknowledged us from stage. It was the greatest moment. Yeah, it was almost as good as winning the.
Amen.
So yeah,
I'm with you on that one.
no regrets. It was thrilling to go. We have little medals and things that they gave us, and it was thrilling to go to the Grammy presentations and then the great musical parties afterwards. Oh my God!
Yeah, some parties.
Oh, they knew how to party. So that was all good. I do want to mention, and David may want to do this too. If you go to planetproctor.com, that's my blog site. Every month I come out with a Planet Proctor, which is profusely illustrated by my friend Chris Gross. And it basically will keep you in touch with what's going on with Firesign Theatre.
Perfect.
I promote everything and anything that has any connection to the group. And rightly so, because we still have a great following, and it grows when people become acquainted with our work. And one other thing, I do a podcast now with Ted Bonnet, who is a guy who's worked with Firesign Theatre radio and with Proctor and Bergman, and it's called Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show. So if you just go to sexyboomershow.com, we interview Weird Al, we interviewed this guy David Ossman, we interviewed Tom Hartman, we interviewed Penn Jillette, we interviewed Leonard Maltin, Melanie Chartoff. Oh, Melanie Chartoff, because I'm Howard on the Rugrats, and Melanie and I worked for 14 years doing that show. So anyway, there's a lot of tangential stuff, and that both David and I are involved in. David, for instance, just participated in a great Halloween audio show, right? Called Haunting of COVID House.
The Haunting of
The COVID House?
Which was it's an original by a guy from Seattle and produced by the radio enthusiasts of Puget Sound. Both Phil and I have worked for them, playing old radio characters.
Oh, that's really weird, because I live north of Seattle. I'm not saying my exact community, but I live in the country north of Seattle.
Well, you're talking to me on Whidbey Island.
Oh, Whidbey.
Yeah.
I love Whidbey.
You didn't know David's on Whidbey Island?
Whidbey Island. But
you're on Whidbey?
So they put together a Zoom cast, which looks something like this. You're at 4/4, and it was just fine. I got to play against my background. You can see the background, but because it was dark when we did the show, it was like this head. And I was a radio announcer, a character.
Good.
And so it was just this head in your ears, so to speak, which was a lot of fun. I think we're going to do the piece that I had prepared to do here on the island with the Art Center before the Art Center closed, which is a piece called Bertolt Brecht in Hollywood. We were going to do the Three-Penny Opera this year, but I have an original piece based on interviews of Brecht's time in Hollywood. That's about a 45-minute piece, an entertaining little Zoom cast. And I think that's what we're going to be doing since this is our access now. I'm going to talk. Phil is down here for me. I'm going to talk to Phil because you can, as I said, you can watch us work on YouTube on Fools in Space. If you go, it's there. Just
Back
fine.
to Firesign Theatre.
Everybody knows how to find stuff on YouTube. So, but Fools in Space, you can watch us, at the four of us, working together as we did on the radio in
Wonderful.
the dope humor of the. So what I'd like to do, because there are many episodes of this, is that Phil and I do a little Zoom cast. We introduce the past and present the present. So that's on offer, Philip. We're still here, goddammit.
Okay, and I must say that during this difficult time of the pandemic, I've actually worked more than I did before.
Me too.
Because this Zoom thing.
Yeah.
The next thing I'm going to do, I have to do it tomorrow, is voices for a thing called Pups of Liberty, which is a delightful way to teach children through dogs and cats about the Revolutionary War.
Oh boy.
Well, that's interesting.
Dogs not versus cats, I hope.
Yeah, dogs versus cats, because it's the red cats versus the colonists.
Yeah, well, wait a minute. What about the hip cats? The hip cats.
Yeah.
That's a little later. I play a Spaniel Adams, and Benjamin Franklin.
That's funny.
And
That's
they're
funny.
doing a little we before they did like 20-minute films, cartoon films for the kids. Now we're doing little 2-minute segments about certain great characters who influenced
who's they
of our country.
Who is they?
Oh, Bert and Jennifer Klein. Bert and Jennifer Klein.
Good for them. Good for them. The more that we can work as artists, either for somebody, for ourselves, with other people, as much as we can do that as artists, nothing is more important in this time than that. I mean, otherwise, put your head under the pillow. It'll all be over. Isn't it over yet? No, it'll all be over. No, it won't.
Not yet. Yeah,
So
because
we're adapting to something that's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, David's a member of the Whidbey Island Players, whatever that theater is called down there.
Then he's my adjacent neighbor by about an hour.
Okay, well, you can come and see his shows when the
theater opens. That's the problem.
And I'm a member of the Antias Company in Glendale. My wife,
Glendale, California.
Yeah,
I graduated Glendale High School. What
you did? Yeah. Are you Armenian?
No.
No.
I love Glendale. My wife's wallet was stolen in Glendale. Anyway,
okay. And by the way,
Antias Theater Company, which is a classical theater company. My wife, Melinda Peterson, and I have been there working with them for 15 years. And we had this beautiful new theater that we opened about 2 years ago. And of course, now it's all dark.
Yeah, the same thing happened. The same thing happened with the Whidbey Island Center for the Arts, right? And as I say, we were going to do a full-scale production of Three-Penny Opera right before the election. What great timing! But no, they reconfigured the theater, but it's not a theater, not yet.
Can I tell you a theater story?
Sure.
I used to go to the Glendale. In Glendale, they have the Alex Theater, which is now
still there.
Okay.
Alex Theater. It's got this great thing.
But I went in through the exit and got a free seat to watch Let It Be by the Beatles, because when people were coming out of the theater, I went, okay, I'm going in the exit. So I conned them out of $5 or whatever. But anyway, I'm so happy to talk to you guys about Glendale, Woodby Island, and all this.
Here's my Alex story.
It's small world.
This is true. Alex Theater. I saw the first movie that I ever saw in my life at the Alex Theater, Fantasia, 1940.
Wow! Holy! You went.
Lived in Glendale. Went to first and second grades in Glendale, at the Richardson D. White School.
Oh, R.D. White. Oh, yep. You guys are scaring the crap out of me.
Well, listen, we've been everywhere, man. We've been around for over 80 years. There's no place we haven't been.
Yeah, all my Glendale people, my Woodby Island thing, and then like Jimmy Gercio, the whole thing.
Yeah, you're talking to history here. You know, we're history. We're hysterical and we're histrionic, but we're also historical.
Can I tell you, I think we're coming to the conclusion here, but I have had such a great time talking with you guys. I'm going to put this on Inside the Cave on my Cave Hollywood show as Dave the Cave, the interviewer, as opposed to David Kessel, the guy in the body. But it has been such a special treat and a special pleasure to have you guys on. Do you have any final comments other than like, everybody go buy your new album?
Well, I'd just like to thank you, David. You've been a wonderful, not only a wonderful host, but a wonderful audience.
Oh, thank you.
Which always makes an interview so much more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Part of your family. And
you know, what I've been saying is that we are really doing what we're doing in releasing our old material and in trying to keep up with anything that's new, because we really do love our audience.
I can tell
you. Always have, right from the very beginning. We've done it for them. You know, not unfortunately, not for the money, but we've done it for the love and for the family of people who are out there. And we just want to extend the family, you know, that's all. Just make it bigger.
Well, you know, when I meet guys like you, which there's not guys like you except you who are yourselves, it's like, I said it before. It's like, what do I say? I've been getting high to you guys for so long. I can't believe it. And you're wonderful. But I mean, that's not kind of like what you say to people, but I think that's actually pretty kind of a comment that shows so much appreciation and love for what you guys have done.
I want to add one more thing. We do it for the funny, not for the money. Right.
Well, if you get it for the money, you're in the wrong gig.
That's right. And we started on listener-supported radio.
I know.
Right. And our career has been entirely listener-supported.
That's what's amazing.
You know, I talked about sending those records out there.
Yeah.
And, you know, and people listen to them in their dorm rooms or under their bed or in their, you know.
All that stuff, man.
In their cave, right? In their man cave. And that was what gave us our success. We were successful enough for a good time.
Oh, yes. Well, yes, but what has happened to us is better than the financial success that we might have had in the 70s.
That's
because
right.
We've entered the language. We're a part of literature.
Part of the culture.
As I said, endless quotes. People quote us. It's in their minds. Well, we're in their minds.
Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451, memorizing the books.
That's right. That's right. Well, anyway. Ray Bradbury, one of my strongest literary influences.
Well, unfortunately, he was correct, but
yeah, he's
so
right.
Often.
And
all right, Dave.
We both got to work with him, which is even more wonderful.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's endless stories to tell.
Yeah, more stories to tell, but hey.
We're in the cave.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you on behalf of Cave Hollywood, Inside the Cave, myself, David Kessel, Dave the Cave, for having the opportunity to hang out with you guys and enjoy this. And I want everybody to go out and buy their new album on Stand Up Records. So go to standuprecords.com and buy it.
Don't keep her in the 70s. And by the way, it's been great hanging with you in the cave, but the blood is rushing to my head.
All right, cool. All right, Kinski. Thank you.
Adios.
See ya. You got to see my eyes for a moment. All right.
He has got eyes. Hey.
See you, Philip.
Hey, I know that guy. Thank you so much. Great, David.
Yeah. This is working.
It is, isn't it?
This is working.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll talk to you soon.
She looked great, by the way. Okay. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Leave. I have left. Now what do I do?